views, opinions, and positions expressed on this radio program are those of the speakers, authors, or other contributors. This broadcast is intended for entertainment purposes only.
Consciousness is an amorphous and expanding entity.
Realize that you are in a cultural hypnosis.
We have been systematically put into a state of unconsciousness so that we cannot see.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like
what we are part of and what we are experiencing, though that is changing.
And now, here is your host, Joe Ayala Ayupanya.
Welcome back to another episode of Quintessential Mark Radio 2.0. I am your host, Ayala Nunez. And the subject matter for today's show, we're going to be talking specifically about a marketing strategy which is not only effective, but it has worked tremendously, and how the so-called powers may be have utilized this specific viral type of marketing strategy. And more specifically, I'm talking about problem, reaction, solution. Now, this mode of marketing or mind control per se was actually postulated by a conspiracy theorist himself, David Icke. Now, many people roundly support David Icke, and then there are others who essentially criticize where he's actually coming from. Whether David Icke himself is a plant, I don't know. Okay. My spidey senses are telling me somewhat yes and somewhat no. Quite potentially a conspiracy theorist against the so-called powers that may be in the beginning, but it seems that he might have gotten bought out. I don't know. This is just my conspiracy mind per se. And so there's, it's kind of like a teeter-totter between yes and no. But I'm going to leave that alone because essentially David Icke, amongst many other conspiracy theorists, New Agers per se, kind of tap into that darkened New Age community. And that is essentially a community of which I walked away last year on Passover, April 2021. And so the reason why I bring this up is not because I'm tapping into that world once more. I'm tapping into the actual theology of it, the mindset, the mind think component of it, the psychology of it. Because essentially marketing does integrate into the world of psychology, because it essentially investigates, interprets, and also brings into numbers how a certain marketing strategy focuses and targets upon how humanity, human beings, the capitalistic mind of human beings, how we essentially look at things, and then how what particular items of bait we essentially gravitate to, bite the bait, and then we essentially go full force with whatever we are purchasing. Or it doesn't have to be a purchase. It could essentially be not only a theology, an ideology, a concept, but it could also be something for which we often gravitate to because we are influenced or forced or essentially frightened to go into, biting the bait into. Okay. Problem, reaction, solution. So let's break it down. Okay. When you think about problem, reaction, solution, we're thinking about A, B, C, D, right? No, not in this case. When you're utilizing the whole strategy, the marketing strategy of problem, reaction, solution, you essentially create the solution first. Okay. And then you create the problem. And of course, the reaction is rather obvious for the most part, because you're essentially frightening the masses, scaring the masses because of a reality of which was created from the problem, which is the crisis. Okay. I've talked about the World Economic Forum. I haven't really talked about specifically the New World Order. But when they were talking about the World Economic Forum, which is essentially kind of like an offshoot of the Trilateral Commission, United Nations, and many other of those sort of New World Order institutions. Okay, again, that can get really complex, and that's a show within and of itself. But to tell you the truth, the people who orchestrate this problem reaction solution are pretty much, for the most part, the globalists, the world, which happen to be Luciferians. And I don't know which came first. We all know that the egg came first before the chicken. But as far as when we're talking about the globalists, the Luciferians, New World Order, Rosicrucians, the list goes on and on and on. And I've seen many maps before which orchestrates or tries to bring to the surface the connections and how all of these secret societies and hidden organizations and agendas fairly, for the most part, interconnect with one another. Okay. Just in the same fashion in how systems theories breaks it down and how the microsystem integrates with the full face of the entire picture, the macro system. But, and again, I don't want to get too extensive into this. I just want to break it down into simplicity. The very art form of breaking it down, a complex type of not only a strategy, but an ideology and a theology, and then breaking it down to simplicity where you can explain it to a 3-year-old. That's where the art and science of all of this is all about. Okay, so problem reaction solution, how the essential people, the powers that may be, the institution of which utilize this marketing strategy is by creation of the solution, creating a problem which contributes to a crisis. And of course, what is clearly obvious is the reaction from the public eye. Okay. What primary events which has inflicted and negatively in many ways to all of humanity, what 2 primary events have contributed or utilized essentially this marketing, this psychological marketing strategy? I'm going to first of all bring it to the more, I won't say the more recent, but historically, well, there was a more recent event, right? But then prior to that is essentially the very event of which has affected all of not only American family, society, and every aspect of the way when it comes to social media, news coverage, schools, people's lives, and just the everyday today, because it has been fairly, for the most part, a significant component, a portion of our society. And again, not only in America, but the rest of the world. And that is the opioid crisis epidemic. Again, like globalists, like the World Economic Forum, like these Luciferians, they often make statements on the surface and people often ask, what are they talking about? And they often make mention of crisis situations. And I remember Hillary Clinton and many other globalists would often make mention, you don't want to miss an opportunity. You don't want to miss an opportunity of a crisis. You have to take advantage of a crisis because it's all part of that problem reaction solution. So which part of that whole marketing blueprint you're talking about? Is it the problem, reaction, or the solution? Guys, come on. Put your thinking caps on and start using your common sense. It is the problem. Crises equals problem. Problem equals crisis. So you don't want to put a crisis to waste. Okay. So guess what? So the traditional drug dealer of the olden days, back in the 70s, 80s, even the 60s, right? You would see the normal drug pusher, the corner of the street making money. But then guess who? Guess what? The governments of the world, the government specifically that I'm talking about, United States. Well, they often ask themselves, wow, you know what? The drug industry is a moneymaker, correct? They making money. These small businesses, per se, these local drug dealers, drug pushers, they making some money, big time money. Okay. And when you get to the more organized crime at the more small business level, you start to realize they're making multi-million-dollar type of money. And even to a certain extent, certain people historically, billions of dollars. So, of course, the government does not want to miss out on that. Right? So, guess what? There's an opioid crisis, but that was created after they had created the solution. Drug replacement therapies. We're talking about Ayala, or we're talking about Suboxone, methadone, and the not so popular drug replacement therapies amongst many other medications or drug abuse, opioid abuse in particular. But the most popular is Suboxone and methadone, right? Now, the whole entire gist of how these drug replacement therapies were created for was to take them off of the street drugs for which they were addicted on and put them on a more legalized drug replacement therapy program, aka methadone or Suboxone. And the original intention was that you would take them off the street drug, put them on this drug, which is just as addictive, right? But then you would slowly wean them off to where over time, however long that may take, that they could actually be free from drugs, period. Opioids specifically, period. But guess what? This is not the case being orchestrated moving forward for many of these drug replacement programs throughout the United States. How crazy is that? To tell you the truth, what happens is that they take them off the street drug, put them on these drug replacement therapies, Suboxone, methadone, and they have these people, these addicts, on these formalized, legalized drug replacement therapies for life. Because it's a moneymaker. And that was something that which had happened back in the 1990s. And the most recent, back in 2010, when many of the new drugs that were pretty much been put on the streets, I'm going to not get into the specifics, but then you started to realize, as I did myself as I worked within the industry, you started to realize that many of these new drugs, street drugs, were synthetics. I have a difficult problem with knowing the local street drug pusher out there who has this elaborate lab creating all of these synthetics, which requires literally millions to billions of dollars to create. Okay. Whoever is producing these synthetics must have to be a larger institution. I'm just saying. Could it be governments? Could it be something else? The pharmaceutical industry, right? So just a question for you, just a subject matter of which you could potentially use that to do your own research. So essentially, when you think that an epidemic just happened overnight, well, guess what? It was designed to happen at that particular timeline, that period of time, because the solution was already created. It takes many, many years to establish the product and to where the product becomes something of which it's mass produced. Okay, so you have a solution already created way before the orchestration of a manufactured problem, aka the crises, aka the very crises in itself for which the likes of Hillary Clinton and many other globalists out there always say within the regular popular media, never let a crisis go to waste. Okay? So that is the opioid pandemic crises, right? Which initially started in the 1990s. The second wave occurred in 2010, and it still is happening today. The opioid crisis, but the opioid crisis is essentially used the problem, reaction, solution blueprint. And let me ask you a question. Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds here to answer within your own mind, within your own home, within your own head. And this question for you is, what event was actually utilized, for which that event in itself also utilized the blueprint of problem, reaction, solution? I'll give you a couple seconds. 5, 3, 2, and 1. If you didn't answer, fine. If you did, fine. That answer is the COVID-19 Plan-demic. Not pandemic, plan-demic. It was planned. And guess what? When the president at that time, okay, made mention earlier that year, 2020, the COVID-19 thing, we will never, ever have a vaccine where it's an injectable. Never, ever. Not a lot of people remember that, but then there's others who do remember. And then it was no surprise to me when it happened. It was a surprise for many people who were opponents for that so-called movement. Well, guess what? The big leader, the big president of that year, got inflicted with the COVID-19 back in October and November 2020. So guess what? Instead of calling this so-called vaccine a vaccine, they called it a therapeutic. Now, as to whether he took it or not, remains to be seen. And whether what they advertised there when he did take the so-called vaccine, aka the therapeutic, whether it was an injectable, a shot, also remains to be seen. But it seems to be, from what they say, an oral therapeutic. Now, this oral therapeutic, the vaccine, was initiated to be mass produced at a certain level to where it can cater to the masses of populations, not only in the United States, but all across the world. And this operation was called Operation Warp Speed, which took, I'd say, about maybe 6 to 10 months. On the longer end, 10 months. On the shorter end, 6. But for people who are, and I'm not a researcher, okay? I'm not a lab rat. I'm not a scientist who is well versed into the creation of mass vaccinations. But as a healthcare worker, person who works in the hospital, but what I know, it does not take a vaccine 6 to 10 months to create. It takes over 10 to 12 years to create a vaccine. And so all of a sudden, miraculously, the president at the time orchestrated or led within this program, Operation Warp Speed, to produce the vaccines for the COVID-19. Now, when you add 2 and 2 together, It doesn't add to 4. Okay. So what had happened was, well, of course, it's the same thing. Problem, reaction, solution. The solution was created before the problem was manufactured and created. Before the crises, per se, was created. And again, like the Hillary Clinton thing, do not let a crisis go to waste. This gave the opportunity to cause a huge scare between 2020, 2021, and, certain portions of 2022 in the very beginning. Not so much now. It's faded away. But guess what? We just went into midterms, right? Midterm elections. And we do have a 2024 election coming up. I'm just telling you. I'm just forewarning you. Okay. Now, we have experienced the opioid epidemic. The first wave, 1990, second wave, 2010. We have also experienced COVID-19. What do they have planned now for 2024? So what are you saying? All of this was orchestrated? Well, I mean, I'm not doing this just to do it. I'm not doing this just to waste my time. I am putting information out there. And if you are thinking, wonderful. If you're not and you're offended, question why you are offended. Okay. Now, if something happens to where there is a solution that is created, right? And within the mix of things to where a crisis is also created too as well, where there is a reaction expected from the mass public. Ask yourself, what is the solution that was created way before the crisis was? What do they have planned for 2024? I'm just saying. Well, thank you so much, dear listeners, for tuning in. If you would like to check out our ministry at R3TD Ministries, by all means, check out our official website at r3tdministries.com. If you would like to check out one of my most controversial articles out there on our blog for the network, please, by all means, visit our website at walkawayfromthenewage.com. And if you would like to tune in to this broadcast and previous other broadcasts on this podcast at QFR 2.0, by all means, visit our official website at QFR20.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Quintessential Mark Radio 2.0.
I feel your blood dripping on me. No, it flows through me. All roads lead back to AD 33. All these devil highways lead back to AD 33. Split the temples back to AD 33. Take me back to AD 33. Yeah. Real Revolution Radio. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages, down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. We'll shudder the radio waves with revolution blades shine blue. Warn us Luciferians at perimeters. The very air is polluted. Devil's advocates suited and booted. Pinstripe with lies, but we shine in the truth. We have our stripes. We're not fallen angels. The human condition, arsenal to their ammunition. It weakens our position, puts a taint on God's mission. So we gotta reconnect the sleeping minds to the ignition. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages, down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. Unplug you from the matrix, hook you up to source power, reinstate your purpose. No climbing Babel's tower, gearing you up. Anointed truth seekers take you out the hidden fields, put you in the killing fields. New age Decepticons launching out all assaults on all fronts. God steeple shutters and more fog. Demonic realms open up, now you open fire up. Defecting from the new age deception. God of the Most High, we walk with old body giants, mobilizing Christian armies, swords made of raw defiance. Old gods in our blood like Christ-barbed soldiers. Follow the steps of the giants, the Nephilim order. Our gospel in the battlefield, smash satanic shields. Code of honor in our blood, never see us yield. Conscious human beings doing the Almighty's work. Channel the forces of light back into this world. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages. Down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. I will lay your body down. We will lay your body down. Real Revolution Radio. Yeah. Credit where credit's due. Shout out to our new age defectors. John Ramirez, Stephen Bankars, Doreen Virtue. May God be with you.